All right, well, welcome to Powerful Design for Non-Designers. I'm very excited that you're here. I'm excited that some of you got here early enough and for me to show you for you to show me your publications, because that is I think essential. I want to tailor this session to you. And one of the things that I often find is how many people in this room experience well, you wouldn't be here, but if you weren't, but how many people in this room have designers who are, your design staff is, you don't have enough designers, your designers aren't properly trained, and or your designers are overworked and they need some people to share the workload. I see a lot of hands there. Designers are overworked, they need somebody to share the load. Yeah, okay, so we're gonna focus on that. And my name's Dr. Lisa Sharp. I'm a professor of graphic design and multimedia at Greenville University, and our publication's up for a pacemaker this year. We're pretty excited. But I want to get right into it. So one thing that I think stops people from saying, okay, well, I can do this. I hear it time and time again. I'm not a designer. I'm not creative. I'm an artist, not a designer. Anyone heard that before? Okay. Or I'm a writer, not a designer. You can't expect me to do this, right? Okay, yeah, but the truth is that anybody can be taught to design, and I know this is probably a rather extreme statement, but it doesn't take a special talent to be a designer. It's a learned skill. So how do I prove that or say that? A number of years ago, I was actually called in to design for Chicago HIDTA, which stands for High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area. So that's the FBI, the Department of Justice, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and the Chicago Police Department. Now, they could not design their way out of a hat, right? They couldn't read each other's org charts, and they couldn't figure out how to do that in such a way so they could communicate and stop crime. So I used these same principles with them, and I will say they didn't walk out designers, but they could understand their organization's information that they were feeding each other. Because design it's a learned skill, and it is designing information. So one of the things that I think about when I look at training people who are not designers, anyone can be trained to be a designer, but if you want to do it fast and you want your staff to have good results, we want to think of design not as an art form, but as a series of rules. When you apply those rules, every time you'll get an interesting looking publication. So, and also I know, how many designers are in the room? Okay, no offense, I get what you do, I get design, I am a designer, but we're speaking to people today who are whom you possibly might need to train, or yourself might want to have those skills for future use. So we're going to design a publication today, a publication spread. We're going to start with a headline, and we're going to move on from there. And you guys are the art directors. I'm going to teach you a few principles, and you're going to help me design that publication. So you can take that home, and because we're recording, you can play it to your staff because it'll be up on YouTube. All right. Okay, designers in the room, you're not allowed to answer this question. But how many people can tell me what the difference between this typeface and this typeface is? Oh, yes. The top is a, the bottom is a, all right, then I don't have to go there. Okay, so you know that most people can't tell the difference. Most of your readers can. So one of the first rules that I teach people is to pick one sans serif and one serif and use it in combination. Now that is one of the oldest design tricks in the book. So one strong serif and one contrasting serif, use them in combination, or pick one big family. Okay, so for example, this is kind of my typeface of the moment. It's called Avenir. And as you can see, we have a lot of choices here. We have Avenir Heavy, Avenir Demi-Bold, all the way up to Avenir Ultralight. And so I could use just this typeface, use it in combination, and get some great stuff. And one of the hallmarks of good design is to be able to get a lot out of one typeface. So if we just chose this one typeface, we have enough weights in this typeface to get interesting, compelling type, headline type, body copy, captions, pull quotes, and all of that good stuff. Okay, here's a serif with a big family. So this is Adobe Caslin Regular, or Adobe Caslin rather, and you can see it has a lot of different weights to choose from. So you could choose this typeface if your paper was perhaps more traditional. One of the rules of designing for type, how many people are online publication or have an online edition? Okay, one of the rules to remember is that a sans serif typeface is easier to read on screen, whereas a serif typeface is easier to read in print. So I guarantee you that anytime you walk into CVS or Walgreens and pick up a magazine or like a pulp fiction romance novel or whatever you're going to use, you're going to see a serif typeface. So generally, they're considered easier to read in print, but that's not a hard and fast rule. Okay, so first thing we're going to go through is a high contrast type treatment for a headline. And we're actually going to do that in Adobe Illustrator, and then we're going to move on over to InDesign and start laying out our layout. So we're going to mouse over to Illustrator here. Okay, so I have 4 type choices here. And what I'd like us to do is, okay, well, let's look at, so this is Avenir, just to give you a heads up, and this one is Caslin. Now I have 2 other choices here, Futura from the 1930s and Bodoni from the 1700s. And they actually also represent the 4 basic families of type, which I'll be talking about in my next session at 3:30 in this room. So let's try, and I'm going to have people raise your hand, let's try Avenir first. Okay, so here's Avenir, and I have it all in light. Okay, so when we get to, I'm going to mouse through all the choices, and I want a show of hands when you think we've got it. Oblique, medium, black, heavy, black oblique. So which one, and which one is going to give you, so how many people like light combined with book? We do not have any votes there. Why? There's not enough contrast, right? We don't have enough contrast. But what if we change that to Avenir heavy? It's not the heaviest one, but does that have enough contrast to capture your attention as a reader? Okay, so let's try one more. Let's try Avenir black. Better or worse? Better. All right, so how many people are voting for this one? All right, so I'm going to do something quick. It's called kerning. So Option left arrow in Illustrator, InDesign, and Photoshop will tighten up the spacing between your individual letters of type. So now we have 1. Okay, so now let's try something with a serif typeface. Let's say you have a more traditional type piece of type. I am going to convert this into I'm going to convert it to uppercase. Okay, that doesn't look very good, does it? Yuck. Okay, so I'm going to resize that. Command-Shift brackets. And I'm going to letter space it. Option arrow. That still doesn't look very good, does it? Why? It doesn't have enough contrast. Power looks weak. We want power to look strong. So let's try the bold weight. Okay, so I still don't think this is a perfect solution. In fact, I'm going to remove the capital W. Is that better or worse? Better. Okay, how about if I do this? Word, and then I put it in the italic. Better or worse? Better. Okay, so power is the word that we want. Notice I kerned that. Power is the word that we want to stand out. So now we have 2 headline treatments out of potential thousands, right? Now let's try that. Now I will admit I cheated a little bit on this, and I picked 2 typefaces that I know work together. But I want you to look at one thing, and that's that I matched what's called the X height. The X height is the height of the small letter. Okay, and we'll learn more about that at 3:30 when we talk about typography. But I matched the X height here. When I had I'm actually going to make it 1 point smaller, and I think that's better. So when the X height matches, The X height matches here because we have the same typeface. The X height matches here because I shrank the type and bolded it. Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm actually gonna, we could play with these, but if we had to pick one, which would be the more powerful choice? The top one. Why? Because it has inherently more contrast, right? And so this typeface has a more, for this word, it has this particular phrase, the word power has more contrast, and we have more inherent contrast between these two typefaces, right? Okay, now we're going to make our headline. So this is an actual headline from the Vista. We're going to use the same idea. And so let's do the same thing. This will be the headline for our presentation. So right now we have Avenir, and I'm going to switch this to Caslin, italic, and I'm going to do a couple things, and you guys are going to pick. Okay, so I option dragged that. I'm going to use the same trick that I used before. Type, change case, uppercase. You can do this all in that, yeah, and that doesn't look very good, does it? So we don't want that italic. That's not going to do it for us. But I'm going to letter space it. I'm going to shrink it down so that its X height matches. I'm going to kern it just slightly. But that's not very powerful, is it? What's the power word that we want to highlight here? We want to highlight the word mind. Okay, so what should we do with the word kaleidoscope? Let's make that the italic, absolutely. So let's try the light oblique, and let's try something else. We're going to try switching out those typefaces, and we're going to use Caslin italic for this one, and we're going to see if that works better. Now, there are more typefaces in the world than Adobe Caslin Pro, but I happen to know that those two work well together. Okay, and maybe this one can be Avenir. So let's try Avenir Heavy. Okay, I'm going to match the what? The X height. Okay, so better or worse? No, we don't like it. Do we like this one? This one's a little tougher because it's a long word, isn't it? Okay, so let's try something else. So let's try all Avenir, all caps. Or all Avenir, all lowercase. Maybe we like that one better. So we'll increase the X height there. Better or worse? This one. Could we improve it? I heard someone give me one suggestion. It looks like one word. Okay, if I do add a space to it, does that help you? A little bit? Okay, so let's try something else. Let's try using this in all caps. And I'm going to add a straight bracket in the middle. I'm going to kern that. Better or worse? All right, is this our winner here? All right, and that took a big 5 minutes. Okay, so you can see if I look at how we went through just two typefaces. This is not even, we could spend another couple of hours, honestly, but we're talking about design for non-designers. How quickly were we able to do that just with two typefaces? All right, so this one is going to end up being our winner headline. So I'm going to go ahead and save it. And then we're going to move on over. We're going to move back to the PowerPoint, and then we'll move over to InDesign. Okay, so kaleidoscopemind.ai. All right, so that's our first principle. Now our second principle, first principle was type contrast. So either using a large sans serif family or a small sans serif family but a high contrast combination. That's number one. You will get better design out of your editors, designers, and non-designers if you have them adhere to that rule and or just start playing around with that rule. We're going to go even further with this because in the next session, because we'll just be using a headline and seeing what we can do with that. Okay, so now let's go back to our layout. So we're going to use those two typefaces and we're going to lay out an entire spread. All right, so, and this time we're going to go to InDesign. Okay, now I called this one boring layout because I frequently get this type of look from people who are new design or people who are non-designers. Okay, so let's get rid of this. Okay, so you can see, what do we have here? We have this yucky type here. We have two columns. I find it really hard to get designers out of the mode where they're thinking just in 2 or 3 columns. And we're going to start to use negative space, white space, and a grid to create this spread. So I'm going to start here with a 12-column grid. Okay, can you all see that, or should we turn out the lights? This is going to get to be, could someone just hit the lights in the back? Yeah, just let's do dark screen. Okay, so I've already set up this spread in InDesign, and instead of just using, I decided to use a spread because I know most of you think and work in spreads. Those of you who are on a newspaper, obviously, you have your front page news and we have your interior news. So I set this one up for 12 columns per page, which gives us a total of 24 columns. Now here's what I see a lot of new designers do. They're going to set up their page with 3 columns, and their layout's going to look like this. So what happens then? They don't have enough versatility in their grid to do something interesting. So let's do something more interesting than that. So let's go back to our spread. Whoops, that's my after. Let's go back to our spread, and I'm going to use just black boxes to represent pictures, but we're going to place our headline. Okay, and now I'm going to place a Word document that is actually the Kaleidoscope Mind, that actually is the text for this particular publication. All right, so we're going to place that. And I am going to draw, and I'm going to use my grid. I'm actually going to draw 2 unequal columns for this, or possibly 1 large column. So I'm going to make 1 column here. So you want to get your art directors and your designers, or the people who are handling that, starting to think in terms of grid space. So, and when I talk about grid space, I don't mean that traditional 3-column layout. What I do mean is think in terms of grid units. We have 12 grid units to cover this entire space. So let's use them all. So I'm going to make there's no rule in publication design that says all columns must be equal in width, but I'm going to make this one go over 3 grid units, and I still have a little bit more room here. And I'm going to do the same thing. So that's going to cover 3 grid units, and that's probably about the length of this article. Okay, so barring adjustments, I'm just going to do a Command R and line these up. Top and bottom. Do you notice that I didn't put margin in? Do you notice my layout has no margin? It has no margin because non-designers see margin as the trim line of the page. So they will not, you can talk to them all day and you'll get back something that you'll get a ½ inch margin because they've set that up as their default. So don't use margins, or tell them, hey, we're going to have we're going to give you a template and you set margins that are unusual. It's one of the harder things for new designers and people who are not designers to comprehend, that we are using grid units and they don't necessarily have to follow a specific regular structure. In fact, asymmetry is much more interesting to your eye. Okay, so I'm just going to put these, I'm going to put some picture boxes in here, and then we are going to rearrange this layout. So I'm going to use a square, one that's a bit larger, and we're going to start there. Okay, so I'm going to hit W actually. Here's what our publication looks like right now. All right, so I'm going to remove her byline here. Okay, so what could we do to spice this up a little bit? Well, number one, I could get this type out of the gutter. That would be good. And okay, so we have two columns of type. One is approximately double the size of these other two columns. All right, so how are we going? Let's say that we have three photographs, one large photograph, and we want some sort of call out or pull quote. Okay, so let's take a look at that. I'm going to make this is the obvious pull quote in this article. And I'm going to call that out in a type box of its own. And I'm going to hit W again so I can see everything. So I want to make sure I'm following the grid. So this will be 3 grid units. And I'm going to paste that. I'm going to justify it left. Command A, Command Shift L. I'm going to increase the size. Command Shift greater than, less than. And let's zoom in on this, and I'm going to save it. That would be good. Okay, so we are using Helvetica. There's nothing wrong with Helvetica, but it does happen to be the default. Or we're using Helvetica or Myriad. But we are going to use, since we used Helvetica for Avenir for the headline, we're going to use the serif for the body copy. Okay, so take a look at this here in InDesign. So my type size I don't have a size. I'm going to specify, what type size do you think I should use? 10, 11, or 12? Who votes for 10? Who votes for 11? Who votes for 12? Some of you aren't voting. Okay, so the average person is capable of distinguishing an 11-point type size. And also, if you go to the CVS or you go to the drugstore, you open up a magazine, I guarantee you it's somewhere, their body copy is somewhere between 10 and 11 points. So we're going to use 11 for this. All right, I want you to notice something else. Check that out. 13.2 points with a parenthesis around it. Okay, that is known as, so who knows the word letting? All right, letting is what? Space between lines of type, right? Very good. Now, this is called auto-letting. So auto-letting is 120% of the type size, but we never want to do that. We want to always use a numeric value for our letting after we've set our type size. So I'm going to do a little bit lighter. I'm going to go with 16-point letting. And that's going to give you just a little bit of a lighter look to our type. Okay, and it also, so that'll enhance our readability just a little bit with the serif typeface. And now we have, hit W so we can see all this. Now here we have this. Okay, let's switch it up. First of all, I'm going to set this to Avenir since that's our choice. I'll use Avenir book. All right, so this is not a very interesting layout, right? Let's spice it up. Okay, it does use white space. It does use hierarchy. We have 2 strong typefaces. We have a strong headline. but let's mess with it a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to move some of these pictures off onto the canvas. What should we do with this space? Does this seem like more of a picture space to you, or does this seem like a good space for kind of a lead-in or something to interest your eye? A lead-in? Okay, so we'll use our lead-in right there. All right, so wonderful thing about InDesign is it's snapping to the grid for us. Okay, so let's zoom in on this a bit. Disassociation, the disconnection or separation of something from one state of being or another. Okay, what is our principle for type? Strong what? Contrast. Okay, so let's see if we can use strong contrast to help lead people into this. Is that better or worse? Better. Okay, now I'm going to shift return, soft return. That, do we like that, or do we like the lead-in just starting there? Absolutely, because we don't want, we can turn off hyphenation, but we don't necessarily want our hyphenation there. And I'm going to do that a couple more times because I don't want us to create some widows or orphans, and I don't want us to create any hyphenation. So we'll make that just a hair wider. Okay, so now I'm not even working in color here, but I am going to move this because I have an invisible optical grid line here. See it where we start the word kaleidoscope? And InDesign knows that too. It's giving me smart guides. Okay, so looking at this page, what next? Photo. Okay, so we could do a photo that bleeds off the page, or we could use our 3 photos. What do we want to do? Who votes for 1 photo? Remember, you're the art directors. Who's voting for using the 3 photos? Okay, actually the 1 photo is winning, so let's check it out and see if we like it. Okay, so this runs over 3 grid units, so it could go right under there, right? But how interesting is that? It's not. It's not. Okay, so this is called kaleidoscope mind. We're talking about disassociation. Let's pretend we have a few more pictures. Is there anything that says we cannot bleed these pictures off the page and or angle them? And you get to decide here, better or worse. I'm going to have that go down below the margin there. Yeah, we can do whatever we want. We're the art directors. Yeah, let's try that. Okay, could we make them 2 different sizes? Sure we can. Okay, so now how's our layout looking? Is this a little bit more interesting? Okay, this side we're doing great. This side, we're not rocking it quite as hard, are we? Okay, is there any rule that says this headline needs to be top left? No. Okay, so where shall we put it? Let's try right. Do we like it on the right? No, we don't like it on the right. How about if I turn it on its side? It's a title, excuse me. I'm mixing my metaphors there. What if, okay, I'm going to put my 3 pictures on the pasteboard here. We know we have to put them in somewhere. But suppose I increase the size of that headline. Command-Shift-Option-E sizes that content to the box. Is that stronger or is that weaker? Let's put the pictures back in. Okay, this right here, that's problematic, isn't it? But is there any law that says we can't have unequal placement to our type columns, right? So when you're working with your designers, they are going to want to, I actually think I like this aligned, but they're going to want to align everything perfectly. And our job with the grid is now we created our grid, and now we're starting to do what is called break the grid. So I'm going to flip back to my PowerPoint here just to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Okay, so here are a couple of examples of content laid out two different ways. So you can see the grid in operation there. I think ours is actually more interesting already. What do you think? We're having a little bit more fun with it. But right now we're breaking the grid, and as soon as you break the grid, you're starting to turn your rule-bound design staff into people who can become rock stars, give you more interest to your publication. And so we're going to look at that. We've already done some of this. Angles, unequal columns, use of negative space, and remembering that asymmetry is always more interesting to your eye. Okay, so let's flip back to InDesign here. Now we know we have these three pictures. They have to go in the publication. Okay, so let's make it a little bit boring, and then we're going to try to spike it up and make it a little bit interesting. So I'm going to make sure they're on grid so that we have some consistency. And let's hit W. Okay, so what's bugging you about this layout? Yes?
I'm just going to ask this. So is there anything specific, like if it's on the spread, as long as that headline is somewhere on the spread, because I just always want to make sure it's before the copy.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
On the left side of the page or above, but even if it's not above, just at least have it before.
I think you have a good point. So do we like the type, do we like it vertical? Let's switch it up and see whether vertical works out better on the other side, because as you mentioned, we're not reading that headline. And what is our number one job as designers? It's to get people to read what we wrote, right? So let's see if we like that better. Now I'm going to move these out of the way for now. So it is Kaleidoscope Mind. We have kind of a random placement of pictures. Maybe that works. Let's move this type over. Is that more pleasing to your eye? Okay, so one more thing that might help us out. I'm going to use the invisible grid line that's created by the division between Kaleidoscope and Mind. Okay, all right, so what else is bugging you about this layout? Yes, ma'am? The empty space. It's bugging you. Do you have a newspaper? Yeah. It's bugging you. Of course it's bugging you, right? Because you need to fill every available space. All right, so white space in a newspaper is not necessarily your friend, but you'll find if you look at any advertising or for anything high-end, you'll find that they use a lot of white space or negative space. So for anyone, yes, ma'am?
Sorry, I think the thing more about white space is what you need is not necessarily this. I'm a yearbook person, so maybe I'm more comfortable with white space.
Mm-hmm.
It's like trapped with green lines together.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we have our white space right in the middle of the page. Do you think that's what's really bugging you? Okay, well let's change that up a bit and let's see. Yeah, okay, so let's move something else into that. You want to do this 3 squares? Okay, the lady in the front said let's do the 3 squares, and then I want to hear from whoever just spoke up. I'm going to switch this out 45 degrees for fun. See if we like it. If we don't like it, we don't have to keep it. Better or worse? Better? Okay. What about all this white space at the top here? We need something there, don't we? Pull quote or picture. Okay, the lead-in. Is that too crowded? Yeah, let's try a picture instead. Okay, and like I said, now the good thing, depending on the picture, that could bleed. But we can also add some elements just for fun. what if I add kind of a header and a footer to this design? That might be more interesting. And then I'm going to kind of bring it together by using the same thing on the bottom. This is actually a fairly old designer trick too. Better or worse? Better. Okay. So now do we need this photo and do we want it on an angle? Or is it better over here? Does the call out make more sense over here? Yeah. So our lead in or call out makes more sense now that we have aligned it with that grid. And I'm going to align it optically with the straight bracket right there. Okay, all right, how are we doing? So we have about 20 more minutes to play with this. What are the problems that you see with this layout? Yes, yes, and this is really awkward, isn't it? This space, that's super awkward. Okay, so spacing of the 3 photos. Do we like this on an angle or should we skip it? All right, let's get rid of it. Okay. So we know we need the 3 photos. We can align them all perfectly, but do we like them aligned like this or would we rather see them somewhere else? We've got to do something with this space. The space is killing us, right? So, okay, so did we get ourselves into a bit of a hole with the two columns of type over here? Could we add more type here and make a better layout? Okay, let's try it. Okay, so we are getting dangerously close to the gutter here, but better or worse? Better, okay. All right, so now we have enough copy here to go to 2 columns. All right, dissociation. Okay, so I made it one random size. Let's try it bigger. Too much? Yep, I agree. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we might want to go back to Illustrator and separate this out as a possibility. Okay, but let's look at what we have so far and let's look at those principles because we could play with this layout all day long. So we have the first principle is type contrast, right? Second principle is the use of hierarchy. Actually, is type contrast or picking a large family. Second principle is type hierarchy, and third principle is use of grid and negative space. So we can go ahead and play with dissociation, the word itself, and keep these on grid. All right, let's try that. Let's go on back to Illustrator and create something new. Let's put it in our typeface that we like. Do we want to try it in all caps? Okay, so it might clash with the headline. All right, so let's keep it all lowercase. I'm going to turn this type to outlines, Command-Shift-O, ungroup it, Command-Shift-G, and now let's do as we suggested. Let's play with this. So I'm kind of doing it by syllables here. Any rule that says we have to use the typeface at one size all the time? No. No, not at all. Okay, better or worse? We want to give that a try? Okay, so let's save that. We could copy and paste it, but that's bad practice in terms of production workflow, so we aren't going to do that. All right, let's go back and place it in InDesign. All right, so of course it went on the first page. Oops. Did it? Here. Yeah, I don't see it. I'm going to place it again. Okay, there it is. Dissociation. So I'm going to remove that. I'm going to place this here, but now it's fighting with the headline, isn't it? Yeah. So maybe we want it over here where there's more copy and use it more as something illustrative in typography. Command-Shift-Option-E. Maybe we want it to bleed into here. Or do we not like it, or should we get rid of it? Okay, so how many people vote keep it? How many people vote get rid of it? All right, I think I agree with you. Okay, so we have, I think we have a well-designed page. It's a little bit conservative. Wouldn't you agree? It's a lot conservative. But we are doing where I think we need to make some changes is probably this side, right? This side looks nice, but it's on grid. We have a headline. We have our body copy. We have a call out. We don't have a byline, but we're going to skip that. Where we have the most work to do, it's on this side, isn't it? Right? Okay, so you're going to tell your designers, okay, so how can you make this layout more interesting? And they might say, what? And now we're going to start to creatively break a few rules. We need something over on the right side that is going to grab our viewers' attention. So I'm going to use, so remember, asymmetry is more interesting to your eye. Placement of these, do we want them on grid or do we want them messed up? Who votes messed up? Who votes on grid? On grid wins. All right, so let's make these on grid and let's see what we think. Okay, is that a stronger layout overall? No? Okay, so what's wrong with it? Tell me, let's talk about how to fix that. Is this too heavy? Okay, so what do we want to remove? This? That's an extra text box. Goodbye. Do we want to remove top or bottom picture? Who votes for top? Who votes for bottom? Who's not voting? Okay, I'm going to remove the bottom one. We can always put it back. Is that a stronger layout? I think these three little pictures are killing us right here. Let's try that. Okay, let's put one right over that column. You mean this corner up here, right here? Okay, all right, let's do that. Okay, that's, oh, below it right here? You know what, it's not terrible, but it does hurt our column structure that we have. Okay, stronger or weaker? Yes, ma'am.
What if we took those three arranged that way and stuck them on the other page above the copy?
Above the copy? Let's copy them and test that out. Better or worse? Not enough white space, right? Okay, so We may not achieve a perfect layout here, but we're gonna do our very best to do this in the time that we have left. Does it help if we have a wider column? Here's another thing we haven't played with. A wider column, and I'm going to get rid of that, and more space allocated to the picture. All right, let's try that. Is that better? Yeah, okay, so now we still have a little bit of awkward white space, but how many people like the image bleeding off the page like that? Okay, all right, so I have some votes for, and I have some people who, well, I didn't ask. Okay, so now, next question. Is this pleasing? Is it okay, so do we have an asymmetrical layout? Okay, number one, more interesting to your eye, right? Do we have contrast in the type? Is there a place that we could insert more contrast that would bring this together? Somebody wants to talk. How could we put more contrast in? Yes, sir.
I was just going to say, the whole time I've been thinking something just visual up above there. I know we have the white space, but it just feels like we need something, whether it's not an actual rectangle space, like an irregular asymmetric shape.
All right, let's try that. Let's use the pen tool, actually, because we could put a picture in here. Since we are talking kaleidoscope mind, let's see how that works. And remember, these are just placeholders. Now, is that a little bit more, does that get the feel more of the story? Right? Okay, now this looks a little bit out of place, doesn't it? There's a reason I made it 3 pictures too. It's because I wanted us to make a choice between, I wanted us to make a choice for asymmetry. Okay, can these pictures bleed? Better or worse? Okay, we still like this treatment better, right? Okay, all right, but let's ask ourselves the basic questions, because we're not going to achieve perfection in an hour, right? Have we created enough contrast in our type? Have we used our white space in a designed way? Have we used our grid in a designed way? Is this perfect? No, definitely not. Any other suggestions for what we can do with this? I kind of like this bleeding across. No, I don't. Okay. All right. Any other suggestions for what we can do with this? So I feel like we have this. This is rocking right now. This is not. Any other suggestions for what we could do to this space?
Well, I was going to say if you did the 2 pictures on the bottom and did that kind of reverse, but then continued the kind of fun design across a little bit.
2 pictures on the bottom and did that in reverse. You mean here?
No. How you had it before.
Okay. Oh, you want this on the bottom?
No, with the 2 square pictures above the bigger picture.
Got it. Okay.
And then continue the fun design.
Okay, so let's move this off the page. We have room for it actually down here. And then maybe this picture could have an irregular outline. Actually, they could both have an irregular outline if we wanted. So P for the pen tool, and we're going to continue. And we could insert a picture of someone we could insert a human interest type picture. We could insert a texture. We could insert anything we wanted into there. Now, don't you feel like square boxes are not doing it for us anymore? They're not. Okay, so what do we need to fill this space in an interesting way? What one more thing can we put in there that's asymmetrical, gives us strong contrast, and uses negative space? Yes, sir?
Maybe try a triangular picture?
Sure, why not? Actually, I'll do that with the pen tool. Okay, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an equilateral triangle, does it? Nope, so we're going to think outside the box there. literally. Okay, so now does this give us the feeling of more kaleidoscope, mental illness, sharpness? Does it give us that edgier look that we were looking for? Okay. Well, so I want to just bring you back for some closing thoughts. If you followed, you can see how we went from very conservative to, okay, the scary, nothing on the page, to a very conservative layout, to something that was far edgier and more interesting, just by applying those 3 principles. So so if you get your design staff, if you teach them those 3 principles, you are going to, and coach them through that, and if you try it yourself, you're going to get a much stronger and more interesting publication. So we are out of time. I want to thank you. I am lisa.sharp@greenville.edu, and the web, if you look up on YouTube, you can go to Dr. Lisa Sharp, Greenville University, and you'll find this video up there. Thank you so much for coming.
Will this video be on there?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I have to end it now.